First, Latinos against liberalism. That's the focus of tonight's angle. Now, it seems like just yesterday, when the conventional wisdom repeated endlessly on the airwaves was that Trump-era Republicans kind of risked losing Hispanic voters forever.
And even having this conversation sends a powerful signal. They're doing high fives in the Clinton campaign right now when they hear this.
The things he is saying that is turning off, are turning off large blocks of voters, Hispanic voters.
Nobody in the Republican Party knows what Donald Trump's immigration policy is, other than that it's hardline, which turns off Hispanic voters.
Hispanics have been trending Republican for years. What has turned them around has been this hardline immigration.
Now, indeed, Democrats thought they had the Latino vote in the bag forever. Just throw them a few cliches about how we're a nation of immigrants and then humor them with meaningless gestures, or as it's now called, Hispandering.
Le pedimos a todos los neoyorquinos que se mantengan informados sobre el huracán Sandy, llamando a
cada persona con el respeto y dignidad que merecen como humanos.
La situación ahora es inaceptable. Este presidente ha atacado, ha demonizado los inmigrantes. Es inaceptable.
Sí se puede.
It's great to be back with all of you. Dios te bendiga. That's about as good as I get.
Well, he was right about that. That is about as good as it gets with them. Empty rhetoric in bad Spanish. Now, more Latinos are onto the Democrats' game today. Although Biden did win 61% of their vote last go-around, Donald Trump actually grew his support by 8 percentage points nationwide among Latinos. And as Vox noted last year, in many of the districts that flipped from Dem to Republican in 2020, Latinos were at least 17% of the electorate. It turns out that Hispanic voters, they don't really care if you speak Spanish. They care about results. And Biden and the Democrats in Congress, they're obviously not delivering results. Among Latinos, the president's approval rating now stands at a stunningly low 26%. If you're Nancy Pelosi, there's not enough designer ice cream in the freezer to make that go down any better. The issues that Latinos care about are also the issues that the rest of us care about. Inflation is the top concern, with jobs and the economy coming in second. And guess who they think is better on the economy and inflation? Duh. Well, according to an Ipsos survey, among Latinos, Republicans edge out Democrats 24-19. And notable is that back in December, there was no difference between the two parties. So things have only deteriorated in these past 3 months. We see that, leading more Hispanics to ask important questions like, is my paycheck actually keeping up with the increased cost of living? Or can my kids get a good education? Or are things better or worse than they were, let's say, in 2019? Or do I have the money to fill my tank this week? And where am I going to get my next can of baby formula? They don't seem to like the answers they're hearing on any of those questions.
What do we know about federal efforts to improve the stock rates nationwide? Have these shipments from other countries made a dent?
So that's the thing. Instead of getting better, it's slightly worse. During the week of May 22nd, about 74% of formula was out of stock.
Wow. And the tweets, they're not working either. Biden says his plan to tackle inflation that Latinos care so much about, it's a simple plan. Let the Fed do its job, lower costs, and keep reducing the deficit. I kid you not. You cannot make this up. They have to know that none of this is going to work. I don't even think they believe it. So now they hope that exploiting tragedy is going to work and doing Spanish language ads for gun control. Dios mío, es muy estúpido. So how can the Democrats be so ignorant and so smug at the same time? They literally cannot fathom that Latino voters actually think for themselves. The daughter of well-known liberal Jorge Ramos, her name is Paola, did an entire show on the topic for MSNBC. She seemed shocked by what Hispanic voters told her on a wide range of issues, including why they switched from Dem to Republican.
One of the things that we found throughout the entire trip is that almost every single person that we talked to, every single one of them was a former Democrat, believed that they had to be a Democrat. At least the heart of what is driving many of these Latino voters, this disenchantment with the Democratic Party. And yes, I think these culture wars and what you're seeing now is sort of uncovering these very innate social conservative values that many Latinos do have. And maybe now with Trump, they feel okay saying that with pride.
Well, the interviews she did were actually really revealing. It turns out that Latinos want schools that teach, not ones that indoctrinate.
I have 6 kids in total. The 2 little ones are currently homeschooling. I pulled them out of school 2020.
Why?
There was a lot going on, but 2020 for me was what I like to call my political awakening. I have never been politically inclined, ever. My father was, so I grew up hearing about a lot to do with politics. Possible communist takeover and all this craziness, but in my mind, I always thought, this is just my dad and his trauma, you know, from being a political prisoner. So I always shied away from that. I actually resented it. But I feel that 2020, there was no denying what was going on. And for me, it hit most with the children.
What are they learning here that they're not learning in school?
For me, it's safety. So I know that they are not going to learn certain impositions.
Like what?
For example, I don't have anything against the LGBTQ community at all. I don't think the kids should have it pushed on them.
Love that ominous music that played under that clip for a while, but it's just kind of common sense. Latinos don't want their kids groomed in the classroom. Shocking. Well, at least it was to the former RNC chief turned poser for a paycheck, Michael Steele.
I mean, you know, have they always been anti-LGBTQ, or are they, you know, suddenly discovering that?
The talking point, again, was we are doing this because we want to protect the children.
Oh, how could you dare protect the children? Because Democrats don't see the freight train coming down the track with hardworking, God-fearing Hispanic voters riding in it. If they don't see that, then they're going to get wiped out by the group that they wanted to simply throw together with other minority voters, take them for granted. Biden's bright lights, Pelosi and Schumer, should have paid attention to what happened in Virginia last November. In Jason Miyares, they elected the state's first Hispanic attorney general. But while the swamp remained tone-deaf and stuck in their old paradigms, Miyares focused on common sense and crime. But instead of giving Latinos pragmatic solutions to the problems plaguing their communities, Democrats gave them a new nickname.
Latinx students are more likely to borrow money to go to college.
It's awful hard as well to get Latinx vaccinated as well.
I've had the chance to meet with Latinx leaders, and no matter where I connect with Latinx communities, one thing is certain: Latinx families are feeling squeezed to the breaking point.
It turns out that actual Latino voters hate the term, according to a new survey by Echelon Insights. How embarrassing. The Republicans' message to Latino voters here should be pretty straightforward and clear. If you want a better life for your children, a chance for a thriving business, safer streets, real respect for your faith and values, and schools that teach without propaganda, then say goodbye to the Democrat Party. If you want a future, though, for your kids that leaves them with no real options other than maybe pot, porn, and government checks, then stay with Biden's crew. Oh, absolutely. The truth is the liberals don't really like you. They just use you, and they talk down to you every single campaign season. They think you're stupid. We think you're smart. And that's the angle.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.